Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for staying till the bitter end. Thanks to all my fans for coming out for my headline set. I'm indeed here to whet your appetites. My name's Delphine Levens. I am now, as of the start of this month, head of distribution at Bohemia Media. Oh, come on, guys. I was kind of asked to do this panel more in the guise of my old job. You may have known me as a senior box office analyst at Gower Street Analytics. And I've been allowed to do this on the condition that I'm not too biased towards the company I now work for. I'm not making any promises on that front. Just to describe myself, and hello to everyone watching at home. I am a mixed-raced woman with black and purple braided hair. I'm wearing glasses and turquoise dungarees, which have had many compliments today. Thanks, everyone. And a black and white stripy long sleeve top. Sorry, I've got my notes on my phone. I've not quite worked out how to make it stay on, so this is going to be interesting. Also, just to mention, I think the Mentimeter thing was up at the start. You can submit questions or comments on Mentimeter. Obviously, this isn't a discussion, so it's just me talking. But maybe if you fancy heckling me, you can do that via Mentimeter. And I'm going to be talking about the forthcoming attractions, so to speak. The purpose is to kind of look ahead at the films dated in 2022, and there's a sprinkling from this month as well. And kind of highlight those that go beyond the typical Hollywood canon, those that are coming from diverse perspectives, and have a view to what will kind of galvanise your audience to keep returning to the cinema across all demographics, and hopefully potentially widen your audience demographic too. So, before we talk about next year, might as well talk about this year. 2021, the official return to cinema. So from May onwards, at least, anyway. And thankfully, even though we only started going back to cinema in May, gross box office has long overtaken 2020. We should do at least double what we did last year in gross box office, which obviously not much happened last year, but we're going in the right direction. We've still got a way to go, but we're going in the right direction. As you might have read or heard, October saw 16.4 million admissions in cinemas across the UK and Ireland, which is the highest number of admissions since 2012. And you may have worked out that October 2012 and October 2021 have something in common, and that thing is James Bond. So obviously not every month is going to be a record-breaking 16.4 million admissions, but it's a good sign. It shows some appetite. I think what will be key to continued success is bringing the right content to audiences in a market that was already oversaturated and has more options than ever for viewing films. To that end, I thought I would highlight a few of 2021's releases. I'm calling it Box Office Wrapped. That was a joke for the Spotify users. Diversity in cinema has been a continually discussed topic. It doesn't always translate towards box office success or clear signs of moving forward. For example, a report published by McKinsey & Co. this year found that the film and media industries are missing out on an additional $10 billion of revenue by not addressing racial inequalities on and off screen. However, we have seen some really promising results this year. So up there we've got Candyman. It's the third highest grossing horror film of the year. It made more than Halloween Kills, the Halloween sequel, with 5.2 million at the box office. Obviously, that was directed by a black woman and stars an almost entirely all-black cast. So that's kind of an incredible win in my eyes. Likewise, Shang-Chi, sorry to mention Marvel in this house of independent cinema, but it is, we have to talk about it again, an Asian American director, an Asian American star, and an Asian American cast, and it's currently the third biggest film of the year, sitting at a gross box office total of 21.3 million. Whilst No Time to Die has obviously been the film for mainstream cinemas, I feel like art house and indie cinemas are kind of still waiting for their big moment to kind of show that everything's back to normal. maybe that'll be award season, maybe there'll be some titles in here that could kind of fit that bill. But I thought it was worth kind of mentioning some other things. So French Dispatch, obviously, it's coming up to sort of 4 million is its current running total, which is maybe not the best result for a Wes Anderson film, but I know that it kind of over-indexed in a lot of independent cinemas and saw people coming back that we hadn't seen yet. So that is encouraging to have, you know, an art house. I mean, obviously, Wes Anderson, a very well-known white man, but encouraging to have that audience coming back into the cinema. And I think art house titles, independent titles, really came into their own earlier in the year when we had less Hollywood content for them to compete with. So things like Nomadland, which grossed 2 million despite having been on Disney Plus for a month already, kind of very much proves those arguments about release windows wrong. And Another Round, which did nearly £900,000 at the box office in the UK, again proving that, you know, with the right buzz and the right publicity, foreign language films really can work. Obviously, everyone knows who Mads Mikkelsen is as well. I think that helps. But yeah, so it was really interesting to see titles like Nomadland and Another Round, seeing them perform above expectations in the market we're in at the moment. And I think as the Hollywood release schedule is continuing to recover, we've got the films that were made and moved back, but we've now got films that had their production delayed. There will be hopefully some gaps next year and maybe even the year after, where the schedule is continuing to recover, and there's more room for successes like these ones. So the return to cinema, I've already talked about the very promising results. Another concern that had been addressed by a lot of people is that the older audience weren't returning to the cinema. And, you know, we have proof that in the summer months, the audience was very much skewing towards the 16 to 34s. According to post-track data from Comscore, which was presented at the UKCA conference a couple of months ago, they are suggesting that now, from what they have surveyed, that older audiences are returning to the cinema at the same level as they were pre-pandemic. And in fact, this is the case for all audience groups they surveyed. They were at the same levels they were pre-pandemic. Of course, this split doesn't actually account for the fact that a smaller amount of people might be returning, even if it's split the same across the demographics. And as such, different cinemas are probably seeing different things. I think that's a very broad stroke to say that older audience are back. I've heard anecdotally from a lot of art house cinemas that that's not so much the case. So there's still a challenge ahead for cinemas in terms of adapting their programme to fit maybe a new or a changing audience demographic in their venues, which hopefully we can kind of start to address today. Also, everything I've said ties into the fact that audience choice seems to be much more product driven than it was in the past. People, you know, going to the cinema is, you know, perceived as a certain level of risk, even if it's a low level of risk, which it is, thank you, The Guardian. And so people are choosing to go and see something, you know, based on the film itself rather than the experience of going to the cinema. And what's been suggested by the Comscore research I referenced is that because people have not been in venues as much interacting with trailers, posters, POS materials, the awareness of the upcoming release schedule is actually lower than it has been in the past. So I think for venues moving forwards, there's a priority to find more ways to reach audiences through digital and social media marketing as well as in-venue marketing. And also, yeah, just being aware of that kind of product-driven approach. And then, yeah, emerging trends I've kind of pulled from this year to look before we look ahead to next year. This is kind of a broad overview of what I see as kind of the key developments to kind of inform what we do going forward. Things are still very uncertain, though, so please don't take this as gospel. So like I said, this kind of product-driven approach means that there's actually less mid-range product. And by that, I mean the films that kind of used to do between sort of 1 and 5 or 1 and 10 million pounds at the box office. Audiences are very much going for the strong franchises, the tried and tested product that they know will deliver. But also, the audience for specialised in art house film hasn't really changed. It's still there. And it was always kind of a small percentage, a small piece of the pie, and hopefully it will continue to take that small piece of the pie. But yeah, those kind of mid-range titles are the ones that are increasingly going to streaming, and even more so in the pandemic. It's accelerating something that was already happening anyway. But with more and more of those films, distributors are finding it hard to justify the cost needed to release them. So I think it means that, yeah, the good news for independent cinemas is they can kind of focus more heavily on specialised indie, art house, etc. And then also, continuing, like I said, continuing conversations and momentum behind diversity. But we have the proof that there's untapped groups in our communities that aren't being served with the films that we're screening. And in a time when financial recovery is so important, it makes a lot of sense to try and tap into those groups in your community that you might not be serving, to broaden your audience as much as possible. I'm also going to have a look at foreign language content. So we've learned in the past couple of years that you can't rely on Hollywood's output. I've mentioned Another Round. Obviously, it would be remiss not to mention Squid Game, which I know is not a film, but proved that apparently people do watch subtitles. So again, it's kind of showing that, audiences, particularly younger ones, might not necessarily be opposed to subtitles. It's more about removing our perception of how to promote a foreign language film, and make it available to audiences in a way that feels accessible and not elitist. The other thing I noticed from pandemic recovery at the box office is that other territories such as France, Spain, Australia, China, for them, homegrown content, films from their own country, was key to their box office recovery this year and last year to fill in the gaps left behind by the Hollywood titles that were constantly moving. And I think from this, I feel that there's a real need to nurture the audience for British film, which we know is there from various breakout successes we've had over the years. But if we continue to nurture that, it will help to future-proof our audience for the future, and to rely less on Hollywood. So to that end, the meat of the presentation, which is kind of looking at upcoming titles across kind of a selection of different areas. So I'm going to start with what I'm very broadly calling diverse titles, which actually is a lot of different things. But in this case, I'm looking at films led by, focusing on people of colour. And for this first slide, I've kind of tried to focus particularly on those films in the more independent context. And then for the next slide, there'll be some more mainstream approaches to the same thing. And I think that, diverse films featuring people of colour, should not be instantly put into a niche category just because of who they're about. So 2 documentaries here. Ailey is the... both these documentaries highlight the work of Black cultural icons and creatives. For those who don't know him, Alvin Ailey is a hugely influential director and choreographer, founder of the Alvin Ailey Dance Theatre, who do groundbreaking work that nurtures Black talent in the dance world, where they're often overlooked. And also, I have to give this Ailey a shout out because it has a Black female director. And if you think I keep mentioning that, it's because it's incredibly rare. And beautiful poster. And then, like I said, I'm going to try not to talk too much about my own films, but Rebel Dread, which Bohemia will be releasing on the 4th of March. Which is about Don Letts. He's a hugely influential figure in the British music scene, a DJ, music video and film director. He's been widely credited for uniting the punk and reggae scenes in the UK, and he's directed hundreds of music videos for the likes of The Clash, Bob Marley and many more. And then on a totally different tack, there's Lingui, The Sacred Bonds. That's the French poster. Which movie are releasing in February, premiered in competition at Cannes and later at London Film Festival. I think this film's a really beautiful piece of cinema from Chad, and we just don't see African cinema very much, if at all. It explores the relationship between a devout Muslim mother and her daughter who wants an abortion, with real nuance and authenticity. huge critical acclaim for this film and a rare opportunity to share African cinema with your audiences. So those are the kind of the smaller independent titles. And then on a completely different level, we have kind of studio titles. And I guess I just wanted to point out that we're at a point now where we're able to break away from, this idea that, just because a title is about people of colour, made by people of colour, it needs to be small and niche. Obviously, you're not going to be running away from here to go and book Boxing Day because it's out tomorrow. But I wanted to mention it. Some of you might be aware of the research I did last year that showed in the past decade, Black British directors only released 28 films theatrically in the space of 10 years. And along with Pirates, which came out last week, we now have 2 in the space of a couple of weeks, which is really great. Boxing Day is incredibly pioneering in the sense that it is a story about Black joy. So many of the stories we see are about Black suffering. And, it's made in the same vein as a lot of the American Black rom-coms that do really well. And the UK has kind of desperately needed this for a long time. And I just think it's really coming from the world of film distribution where people are so quick to write off what works and doesn't work. It's really encouraging to see stuff like this coming to fruition. However, you're only allowed to make films about holiday days, which is why the next one I've highlighted is a film called Easter Sunday. And it's a family comedy in a similar vein, actually, although this is an American comedy, and there's not been much about it, so I don't know what the scope will be in the UK, but it's from a Filipino-American comedian called Joe Coy, starring as a fictionalized version of himself. And again, some research I've done, you might have seen, East and Southeast Asian representation on and off screen is shockingly low. So it's just really encouraging to see, a distributor like E1 putting their weight behind a film that, features almost entirely Filipino-American cast. And then, last but not least, there's obviously it's shrouded in secrecy, but Nope, a film that should need no introduction, is the next film from director Jordan Peele. Get Out and Us both grossed over 10 million at the box office, and kind of, to my knowledge, perform really well across, independent cinemas and mainstream cinemas. So I think, that's just a kind of solid bit of programming for the summer. And then there's a whole wealth of LGBTQ plus titles to talk about. So I've pulled out 6 of them just to kind of look at for the upcoming. So again, Lola and the Sea is very soon. So this film is from Peccadillo, released in a couple of weeks. It premiered at a few film festivals back in 2019. It's finally getting its theatrical release now. It's a Belgian indie film about Lola, a young trans woman, and her father with whom she has a strained relationship. Beyond just the kind of obvious trans LGBTQ plus audience, this feels like a story that lots of young audiences could relate to. Again, I promise this is the last time I'm going to mention my own films, but I'm on the hard sell right now, as anyone who's a cinema programmer will know. We're releasing it on Christmas Eve because it's very Christmassy. It's not. It's a story about 2 sex workers who work in a Berlin brothel and they fall in love. Frankly, it was the only place I could find some space in the release calendar. But I think, a couple of people have booked it off the back of that, so that's good. It premiered at Berlinale, and we also premiered it in the UK at the Fringe Festival, Queer Festival, a couple of weeks ago, and it's gathered a lot of praise for its authentic portrayal of sex work and relationships. And then Mubi have Great Freedom in March, which is a German gem, I would describe it as, and that's not just me. It's got incredibly strong critical acclaim. It's currently 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It's had numerous festival awards and nominations. It follows Hans, who is a gay man in post-war Germany who finds himself repeatedly imprisoned for his homosexuality. Obviously, it's quite a heavy watch, but I found it, really kind of, amazing storytelling as well. So, yeah, like, huge variety. Well, I was going to say huge variety there. 2 of them are German. But huge variety from Germany and the country next door to it, Belgium. Bit more variety here. So I think, all of you, I think Flea needs no introduction at this point. It's getting lots of kind of murmurs around awards, and luckily it hits 2 categories, animated film and documentary film. I think that was very clever of them. But I think it's entirely deserving of all of the buzz it's garnering. And hopefully that kind of awards conversation will help widen its potential audience on release. It's the deeply touching and personal story of a young academic called Amin. He's a gay Afghan refugee who lives in Copenhagen. He's preparing to marry his husband, and he's reflecting on a lot of secrets about his life and his passage to Denmark that he has never revealed to anyone before. I don't think I've cried as much at a film this year as much as I cried at Flea. So I think that's an endorsement. Really incredible piece of filmmaking. Kikada. So this is a really beautiful American indie drama about a young bisexual man, his relationship and healing from past trauma. Obviously another Peccadillo title. They got 3 of the 6 LGBT films, so they're doing the work, which is great. It played in LFF last year. I'm really pleased to see them finally releasing this. Not least just because we need a lot more bisexual representation on the film. That's a really great film that's coming in January. And then again, Peccadillo on the 22nd of February have Rurangi, and I really hope I'm saying that right. It's a highly acclaimed film from New Zealand about a young trans man of Maori heritage, and he returns home to the small town where he was raised for the first time in 10 years. And you can kind of imagine how that goes, but it's a hugely trans positive, LGBT positive film. A really good variety of LGBTQ plus titles coming to our screens in the next few months and beyond. So to go ahead to foreign language titles, a lot of these hopefully will need, I don't think Titan needs any introduction. It's the half woman, half car film. And its status as the Palme d'Or winner, and I think also the reports of multiple cinema faintings, should make for a really good PR campaign on this film. And hopefully it will kind of draw a wider audience than your average foreign language film. I think some of the your normal foreign language film attendee audiences might be a little bit upset, but it should, it's got this really cool poster, this really cool campaign, and I can see it working, hopefully, for a younger age range. And then January the 14th, we have Memoria. I think the director, I'm not going to try and say his name, I'm sorry, his films have been considered very niche and very inaccessible in the past, but I think the inclusion of Tilda Swinton, and the fact this is actually, I know this is the foreign language section, and then I had to check myself because it's actually his first English language film, but I'm leaving it here because in my mind it's half English, half Spanish. It's set in Colombia, and he's Thai, so the director is Thai. But yeah, I think the fact that it's got Tilda Swinton in will hopefully give the broadest the broadest scope his films have had so far. Essentially it's Tilda Swinton in Colombia looking for the source of a loud banging noise that she keeps hearing. But I think it's a really interesting and very layered piece of filmmaking. And then on a completely different tack, there's Belle, another title that I think could really bridge audiences in art house cinemas. So it's from the esteemed director of Mirai and The Boy and the Beast. and it's a contemporary take on the story of Beauty and the Beast. So it kind of already starts out with like a really easily accessible point for audiences in that, you know, Beauty and the Beast is a tale that's known very well. But also it played in competition at Cannes, and the artistry is absolutely beautiful. And I think that will make it appeal to the, you know, the more traditional art house audiences, as well as your young anime audience. So there's kind of lots of kind of little pockets of audience to tap into with this one. And obviously, yeah, anime films have seen some really good box office success in the past few years. The likes of Demon Slayer, which grossed over £1 million in the UK, and Weathering with You and Your Name, which both played really well. So, yeah, I'm kind of really intrigued to see who it is that comes out for Belle and what people think of it. On to second slide of foreign language films. I have to stress this is just a selection. There's actually a really good slate of foreign language releasing all the way through to June, July time. So hopefully it is true that people don't mind reading subtitles now. So yeah, Compartment Number 6. It's a Finnish and Russian co-pro. Lots of people are calling it a take on Before Sunrise. But I would say there's more to it than that. But it's a really kind of charming portrait of an odd couple. And yeah, it garnered some great critical acclaim and attention from festivals. I've just realised, like, yeah, basically everything I've shown has had a Cannes logo on it. So yeah, we've got a real like backlog of Cannes films to get through, which is great, because I just think there's some really incredibly high quality content out there at the moment. Benedetta, another one that I don't think needs any introduction. Paul Verhoeven's non-exploitation film. I mean, obviously it's probably going to be controversial and again upset your normal foreign language audience, but I think it has the potential to be a hit with younger audiences. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and obviously Elle was a really big success for art house cinemas, so hopefully we'll see that audience coming back again. And then last but not least in this foreign language selection, I have Hit the Road, which oh yeah, no one from Picture House is here. I don't know why they keep moving it. They've now moved it to the 17th of June, which makes me really sad because it's incredible. But at least you can plan this one quite far out. So it's Panar Panahi, who is Jafar Panahi's son. There's obviously something in the genes because this is his debut film and you would not know it was a debut. It is incredible. It's this wonderfully touching, hilarious, sad, beautiful road movie. And I have to say, it's kind of, I went into it and I was like, oh, it's an Iranian car film. I really like Iranian car films. This will be like all the other Iranian car films. And it does that and more, which is great. It kind of takes, yeah, a 4-star Iranian car film and then adds an extra layer to it, which for me just really kind of, yeah, made it stand out for me. And yeah, I mean, not to... to make any of these other films seem lesser, but I also noticed we've got Paris 13th District on March the 4th, which is a new Jacques Audiard film, Worst Person in the World, which Mubi are releasing on March 25th, which has had quite a good amount of awards buzz, and I'm also noticing it's being picked up kind of and talked about a lot amongst kind of millennial age audiences, which is really interesting. Parallel Mothers, the new Almodovar film, on January the 28th. Happening, the film from, I think it won what's the big prize at Venice? The big prize at Venice, which is released on April the 1st. Between Two Worlds, Curzon film with Juliette Binoche, released on May 27th, and the film Memory Box out on Jan 21st. So yeah, really spoilt for choice with like really good quality foreign language films. And on that note, something completely different, homegrown films. So as I pointed out earlier, I think there is work to be done to restore the popularity of homegrown content, because it really helped some other countries to kind of weather the storm at the box office in 2020. Also something that, yeah, I alluded to earlier is tempting older audiences back to cinema, and in particular, tempting women over 50 back to the cinema. Obviously, there's evidence that Bond brought in that over 50 audience, but Bond does kind of skew a bit male. And yeah, we need to find... What have I said something that's funny? Oh, right, yeah. So Actually, funnily enough, the whole women over 50 thing was like suggested to me, and then it was like, is there any evidence for this? Don't know. But anyway, some of these films might work for women over 50. And they might work for women under 50 and men over 50 as well. But yeah, I think just to kind of look at like some of what's coming up in terms of, British film. So obviously awards season is going to be, I think, really important for bringing back some of that older art house audience in the next few months. And yeah, the films that kind of jumped out at me, Belfast seems to be kind of at the forefront of a lot of awards discussions at the moment. It's Kenneth Branagh's autobiographical story of his childhood in Belfast, believe it or not. So yeah, I think that will kind of that's hopefully going to be one that plays really well for independent cinemas, not least QFT in Belfast. And then we've got The Duke as well, which in February 25th, it's just like all the elements are there. Jim Broadbent, Helen Mirren. It's a fun crime caper about Jim Broadbent stealing a painting, but it kind of made me think, it's the same audience that came to see Good Liar a couple of years ago. So hopefully those are kind of some nice, really like appealing titles with really strong cast in them that will bring audiences back out. And then I wanted to highlight Phantom of the Open as well, which is a E1 title that's out on April the 15th. So that's the Easter weekend. So starring Mark Rylance and Sally Hawkins. So again, 2 strong cast members front and centre. And really strong British talent attached, written by Simon Farnaby, directed by Craig Roberts. And it's the hilarious story of... No, it actually is. I'm not even being sarcastic. It's the hilarious story of Maurice Flitcroft, who is maybe the world's worst professional golfer. And I actually, so I went into this film thinking it was going to be Eddie the Eagle, and it really surprised me. It's not that. It's kind of almost the antithesis of that. And yeah, I just hope that, I think this is one that if audiences give it a go, it will surprise them. And yeah, there's like plenty more where all of that came from. So in terms of like reliable, bankable things, Fisherman's Friends 2. Didn't see that one coming. But honestly, I mean, it was huge. It took us all by surprise. Two Fish, Too Furious. Fisherman's Friends Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. However you wish to call it, I think it will make people some money. So that's great. Hopefully it will make as much as the first one, which I think did about 8 million at the UK box office. And then there's Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, and The Railway Children Return from Studio Canal as well. So there's kind of, quite a lot of things ticking those kind of like prestige British title boxes. And then on a slightly more interesting level, I thought I'd highlight some of the independent British titles coming to our screens as well. So Boiling Point is Vertigo on the 30th of December, so quite soon. It's absolutely mesmerising, one-shot restaurant set. It's a restaurant on Christmas Eve, so it is actually a Christmas film, believe it or not. So it's a restaurant on Christmas Eve, it's one shot. And I think that kind of that one-shot gimmick, along with Stephen Graham's really strong performance, should help push the film out on a wider level, or at least I hope it will. And it's just, one of the most interesting, innovative pieces of British filmmaking that I've seen in quite a while. And then we've got Ali and Ava, the new film from Cleo Barnard. And that's a love story between these two people who are kind of reeling from past relationships, but trying to find someone to kind of help them feel less lonely. And then lastly we've got The Feast from Picture House on 29th of April, which again I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that Welsh title, but it's a horror film entirely shot in the Welsh language. I think it may be the first ever horror film entirely shot in the Welsh language. Which I just think is really interesting because it's a British film, but actually it's also a foreign language film. And I mean, I just think it's, I think I'm probably overperforming Wales, but I just think it's a really interesting proposition for audiences. And then, I also noted down, again, on the sequels we didn't know what ever expect to happen, The Souvenir Part 2 will be coming to screens this year. And then also there's Harry Whitliff's True Things, which is another kind of love story. There's a lot of British content on various levels for people of various ages and genders that you can be showing in your cinema over the next few months. So, I thought I was going to go over time. I'm actually drastically under, which is a nice treat. So, key takeaways. Cinema isn't dead, despite what The Guardian says. I hope. I've kind of took this approach. I think the first time I got asked if cinema was dead was maybe May 2020, and I said no, it isn't. And I've kind of taken this approach now that if I just keep saying it, then it can't die. But yeah, I've gone on record saying it many a time now. Audience awareness of upcoming titles is lower than pre-pandemic. So all of these films I've talked about today, maybe with the exception of Belfast and the new Jordan Peele, will need extra marketing attention, and they'll need love and support and nurturing to make sure that audiences know what they are and what they're about. There is, however, a really good variety of diverse titles and titles in other languages from other places with new perspectives that can hopefully expand your audience, get certain audience groups to come back, and just give you an interesting programme to tempt people over the next few months. There's a lot of foreign language films, and I think, potential audience for foreign language films, I've put potential audiences wider than before. I think the potential audience for foreign language films is younger than before as well. So maybe, trying to step away from these traditional ideas that foreign language films are only for kind of the older audience sector. We need to champion British films and build up their audience to assure the future of cinema going. And that is, kind of it from me. I don't know if there are any questions or heckles on the Mentimeter. But thanks very much for having me, putting up with my jokes and everything else.
Thank you so much, Delphine. That was a really uplifting way to end the conference. And we had a conversation not long after I'd been to the UKCA Scottish meeting where I just felt like, oh, really? More Marvel? So that's just exactly what we need instead, which is wonderful and uplifting. And I think you're right, they'll need a bit of work, some of these films, but hopefully they'll do really well and meet their audience. So thank you all very much for sort of being with us for the last 2 days. It's been so wonderful to see you all, and I hope you've enjoyed actually being with colleagues again and felt safe in this venue. It's been lovely to come to Waterside. As you know, we were meant to be here this time last year, so it's lovely this is my first time delivering this way up as part of a team, so it's been wonderful to do that at Waterside. So it's my role this afternoon just to say thank you to all our wonderful sponsors, the FDA and the Box Office Company and Comscore, who all helped us deliver this conference, which is expensive, but very much worth doing. And it's been great that they've been involved on lots of levels. We also had great partners this year from Savoy Systems, who helped you as you arrive with your ticketing. Live Cinema UK and XR Stories. I hope a lot of you saw the works in the planetarium last night. And to our biggest partner, really, Watershed and Floating Harbour, who delivered all the tech. And Watershed have been a wonderful, wonderful host, and it's been great again to get a sense of the work they do here in this wonderful building. So thank you all very much, and I'll hand over to my colleague.
Hi everyone. If anyone wants me to come to their cinema to talk about how to tame, made me feel like I'd done 3 shots of tequila and made me come out, pump the air and say, cinema! Happy to do it. I'm here to thank all of our staff. So thank you very much to Adam and the Film Hub Scotland team and Laura, our This Way Up coordinator. They've done a fantastic job. The support team at Film Hub North, who are also integral to this process, and to my team at Film Hub Midlands. And really big shout out to the Watershed Tech team and front of house team, without whom none of this is possible. They've done us absolutely proud. It's not easy to do streaming and all of this, so we really appreciate it. Thank you in the booth. And I'm going to hand over to Sally.
And also, could we just thank Hugh and Maddie, because they joined us with programming the conference today, and your input has been amazingly appreciated, and to Rico as well, who's contributed towards the whole kind of programme coming together. I have nothing more to say. I get the fun job of saying safe journeys home. Get home in one piece. Maddie's waving a lanyard at me. Oh, return the lanyards on the desk on the way out. And come and get a free drink if anyone's got some time before their train. So yeah, I get the have a safe journey, drop your lanyard, come and have a glass of wine with us. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.